And we're live. Welcome, everyone. Happy Wednesday, and welcome to the Mojo Show, your real estate podcast where we talk about everything real estate. I'm your host, Joe Mortgage.
And I'm Cup of Joe Mortgage.
This week's episode, we're continuing on with our series on your home buying roadmap. Now, last week, we covered finding your dream home after getting pre-approved. Today's episode, we're going to focus on after your offer has been accepted on your new home, what happens next? We'll take a behind the scenes look at disclosures, inspections, appraisals, title, all of these important things that are kind of a lot of the ancillary stuff behind the scenes. But before we get to that, a little coffee talk this morning. So Joe, I wanted to ask you, last week obviously was Thanksgiving, right?
Yep.
I assume you had a great Thanksgiving. You had how many people?
I think it ended up around 18.
18. Okay.
Yeah.
So we talked last week as far as Thanksgiving, which to me is the best holiday of the year. You got food, family, football, the best of all of it. And we talked about white meat or dark meat, right? I think we both agreed on the dark meat. But let me ask you, as far as Thanksgiving goes, because there's a lot of different side dishes in that, if there was one that you could just like take it away forever and you'd be good, what would it be?
The sweet potato pie.
No, really? Sweet potato pie?
Not do the sweet potatoes with the mushrooms. I don't know what it is. It's
marshmallows.
Sweet potatoes are a little grainy to me.
Yeah.
And it's not something that I like, nor will I eat very, I choke it down when the wife makes it just because I want to make sure she's satisfied with, I tried what she made. But that one, I am good. And we didn't have it this year. So it was such a great Thanksgiving dinner.
Okay.
So,
nice.
What is yours?
I'd have to say cranberry relish.
Right? Okay.
Now, my mom used to make it, and it was a recipe that was from my great-grandmother, and it's just one of those bitter tastes that I don't care how much sugar and that you add to it. It's just not appealing. If that was gone off my, Thanksgiving plate forever, I'd be okay with that.
Yeah. So Tina does the cranberry out of the can.
Yes.
I'm not kidding. We put it on the table out of the can. So I use those little ribs from the can on where I should cut it.
Yes, absolutely. I think everybody does. Yep, absolutely. Now, believe it or not, that stuff it's okay. I'll try some. It's okay. But people that go to extremes and do this cranberry relish and orange and liqueurs in it and all this other stuff, it's tons of sugar. I'm sorry, I could do without all that.
Yeah, Tina does a cranberry fluff that's pretty good. So
cranberry fluff?
Yeah, it's like whipped cream, cranberry sugar. It's got some apples in it, marshmallows in it. So that one's good. It's more like a dessert, but we use it as a salad, I guess.
Huh. I've never heard of that. Interesting.
Yeah.
Very good. Well, we'll have to stop by the Bartram home sometime for Thanksgiving and try that out sometime.
We will have to do that. We'll have to do that or have some type of potluck. But
there you go.
Well, I'm excited about today's show. I'm done talking about food because I'm still trying to get over the food hangover that I've had or coma, whatever you want to call it. So I went walking yesterday. I actually made JP walk with me yesterday. So if JP's listening, thank you, buddy, for walking with me yesterday. I was like, okay, I got to get out. I get tired at like 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock in the afternoon. I was like, okay, I'm still in the food coma. Let's get out of this. Let's go.
Yeah.
So today is going to be a fun day. I am excited.
Especially the guest we have coming on.
Yes. And I get to do the intro and Joe, how well I prepare on intros.
Oh,
and how well I prepare to go through our scripting exactly the way that you want me to on the guidelines. So
we should do a show just on that.
I'm going to make you do a show one time with no prep, and we're going to see how that goes. We're going to have to do that once in 2025. So,
all right, we'll do one. We'll do
one. Okay, and then you'll get hooked. It's like a drug. You'll want it all the time that way. Then
no, but
no. Well, I'm going to get to introduce the person today. We have worked together since 2013. She was our processor. And Joe, I got to set this up.
Okay.
So we're in Arizona for a meeting, and we're in the ops building. This is when I'm working at Chase. We're in the ops building, and I have a couple of the LOs with me. Nash, one of our business partners, he's with me. And I'm sitting there, and I used, when I worked at Chase in Arizona, I was in the branches. So I got to know the team leads, Lisa, and we were kind of talking. And all of a sudden, I get a phone call from this LO, bitching, griping, complaining, whatever. Pardon my French if I offended any of you guys watching. And it was a short close. It was a problem file. And it's also one of our LOs that works here. His name's Justin Krieger. And
shout out to Justin there.
And I'm like, oh God. I walk over to the processing unit. We don't get to go to the processing unit very much, but this is the first time I'm here.
By the way, everybody can't see this, I realize, but our guest is in the green room right now. She's just going, no. Yep. Oh no, but keep going, Joe. Come on, tell the story.
So we're there, and I'm like, okay, I got to go over. I got to figure out who this processor is, and I'm Joe. I'm in control of everything type guy. I need this to work this way. I tell people how to do things. And this 4'5", 4'6" little girl comes up, long black hair, and is coming up, and she just looks straight up at me. I'm not kidding. That neck is like this. And I'm only like 5'10", 5'11". So, that puts it in perspective. And she comes up and she's like, "You Joe?" I was like, "Yes." And she's like, "I got this. Leave me alone. I know what I'm doing." And I couldn't argue with her. She put me in my place, and I was like, all right, we'll see how you do. Well, she's worked with me since then, and quit Chase and came with us to start up the previous company. And then she came with us again. So you can put how that went. That file went really well.
She put you in your place, and you've loved her ever since, right?
She did. She is amazing. I've known her since she was 24 years old. Working in this industry.
A year or two ago.
She has grown to be a great leader. She is a take charge type person she will get into the trenches with files for us. That is why she is so valuable to us as a team, to our company. The way that she leads her team, and she takes a passion to get to know her teammates and also the people that report to her. She really does care. She has the biggest heart that I know of a person. She is so genuine, and I love her to death. And I want to bring on my friend, Crystal Chavez, to the show.
Okay, we will discuss that story another day. And I am 5'1" 3/4. So I'm to respect me. Hi guys. Hi Joe.
Well, Crystal, welcome to the show, Crystal. I'm really excited to have you here.
Thanks. I'm excited to be here, guys.
The only person that I know of that has actually put Joe in his place. I love it.
Yeah, actually what happened is Justin needed mortgage, and I had 11 days to do this loan with mortgage insurance. Back then, that's you can't do that. So he came to my desk and brought this up, and I was like, listen, I'm going to do this, and after I do this, you and your entire team will let me do what I do, okay? And that was the agreement. So that's really how it happened.
Exactly.
And I was 23.
Sorry, she was 23, not 24. Right.
Yes.
Okay.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Well, Crystal, as you know, we have been helping our viewers through the whole process, the whole kind of road map of buying a home. We've talked about getting them pre-approved, and even before that, as far as budgeting, savings, all these credit and everything. We've then talked just last week's episode as far as finding your dream home, putting your offer in. Now we're at the point of being able to, your offer is accepted, and the next steps, as the three of us know, but we need to really help our viewers understand, is about disclosures. and what they are essentially. Can you help our audience know and understand better what disclosures are and how important they are for them?
Yeah, definitely. So initial disclosures for a mortgage loan are a set of documents that outline the initial terms of your mortgage application and are required by federal and state laws. Initial disclosures can include the biggest things they're looking for. It's a package. To be honest, it's really big. It's anywhere from 50 to 60 pages, and it has things like your home ownership counseling notice, your Patriot Act. The biggest one that, or the most important one I would say, is obviously your initial loan estimate. That one speaks to your terms, your rate, basically what you're paying, and an estimate of what your cash to close is. So you'll receive this document or package, and you'll want to sign that right away. So the first thing you want to do is obviously open it up, review all these documents. If you have any questions, get with your loan officer right away so that you can sign it right away, because we cannot start the process without initial disclosures being signed. So even if your closing date feels like it's far away, you don't want to wait till the weekend, unless it's Friday at 4 o'clock. Yes, wait till Saturday, that's okay. But otherwise, definitely don't delay reviewing your initial disclosures, asking all your questions to your loan officer, and signing that package right away.
So as soon as they get the disclosures, we want them to hopefully e-sign them. And that's the other thing. They have to e-sign them, right? They're not in-person signing, but actually electronically signing, which really, so that everyone knows, you don't have to be that computer savvy to be able to do this. It's very simple to do, right? To be able to e-sign, but within 24 hours, would you think that's fair enough, Crystal? Within 24 hours, having them e-sign this?
Definitely, yeah. I would, if you have any questions, obviously it could take a little bit longer coordinating with your LO, but definitely don't take longer than, 2-3 days to get that done.
Yeah, with disclosures, everybody needs to understand these are initial disclosures. So your loan is not set in stone at that time. Things can still be changed. So if your disclosures are off a little bit, and I try to teach LOs this a lot, is the explanation. These are your initial disclosures. This is what we talked about, right when you got the contract from a client standpoint. It's not going to be the final numbers. If the market is volatile and rates are changing, hopefully you have a really good loan originator that locked your interest rate when they submitted it, because we can't lock rates until we have a contract. Really, there are, programs out there. Somebody probably be like, "Oh, Joe's wrong." There are programs out there that you can lock while you shop. I would not do that in today's market. Right. Unless for some reason we see something where the market's going to go up even higher, because we are at a high interest rate kind of place still. Mm-hmm. So we need people to understand that, we lock loans, and LOs need to lock loans when we get them. If you like it, lock it. And if the market does change, there are different ways that you can try to get that rate down again. Signing the initial disclosures, the one document in there that's very important for us from a lending standpoint is the intent to proceed. Mm-hmm. So that intent, when you're signing those disclosures, that intent gives us the right to now order different things, which we'll get into, and start processing your file towards an approval. So that's why that 24 hours, since everything can be done from the phone now, let's just go ahead and get in there, sign them. Because like I said, you can still make the changes after the disclosures are signed. You can change your down payment, you can change your loan amount, you can change your rates. There's still things that can be done after the initial disclosures.
I think you bring up a good point, Joe, that the loan estimate, the numbers on there. I mean, the loan estimate, it's going to be very close to what, you and I go over with the clients, right? With the borrower, if you will. But understand, it's a blueprint, right? It's a blueprint. Those numbers will shift and change, right? It's a blueprint. They're just your initial disclosures, right? They're not your final. They're not your final. Those will come later at the end, right? So these are just the initial disclosures, right?
Yeah. Well, and the faster we get that file to that processor, it makes the huge difference at contract, because they're the ones that get it into underwriting the fastest for us, and getting that first initial approval is where people, and we'll get to that too, but that first initial approval is more important than the setting on the file and waiting until, okay, now we want to get closer to closing. No, get that first initial approval. So getting that thing signed and going first is important.
So Crystal, I know for Joe and I, we'll have clients that we initially get pre-approved, and it may take them a couple of months, hopefully, sooner, but a couple of months to be able to find the home and put the offer in, and have one actually accepted in that. So once those things are done, disclosures are signed, what are some important documents that our clients need to also kind of update and get to us for you?
Yeah, that's a great question. So especially if you're taking, a few months, you want your loan officer will ask you obviously for the basics, your pay stubs or your tax returns, depending on your employment, your income situation. They'll ask you for all of that up front. Your bank statements, they'll put your credit and all that. So depending how long before you found your dream home and we're starting the process, we'll probably have to update some documentation. So you'll want to know exactly, or at least a blueprint, right, of where your cash to close will be coming from. Are you getting a gift from someone? Is it a checking account? Or do you have to liquidate your 401k? Things like that. You want to already know those parameters, and your loan officer, they're the loan officer, they're going to ask these questions and, help you through that. But basically you'll want to update, give us updated pay stubs, your assets, depending on where they're coming from. If you own any current property, we'll need like your mortgage statements. We need to know if it's escrow, which means is your homeowner's insurance and your property taxes paid through the mortgage. Otherwise, we need your homeowner's declaration pages for all those properties. So depending on your scenarios, anything that you're paying on, so to speak, a liability, or where the cash to close will be coming from, we'll want to update all of that along with your pay stubs, things like that.
Good.
I think that's a good rule of thumb is, the things that we need, we get as an LO for the first initial pre-approval. But if it takes 30 days, 60 days, 90 days to find a house and get under contract, well, pay stubs we need within 30 days of you going under contract. We need bank statements within 30 days. So I like how you said get the updated statements, because you can't do anything from a processing standpoint without those updated statements. You can't send it to underwriting because they're just going to be like, it's going to open up a can of worms that you don't want to go down.
Yeah, and you'll still have to get all those other updated documents anyway. So you're just giving, more documentation, more questions to rise. So updated documents and the set of each is your best case scenario.
Yeah. And this is probably a good point in time for the client to be able to go out and start shopping for homeowners insurance as well, right? Start getting quotes on that.
Yeah, and
right?
Honestly, like some people always say, call about this. Well, I don't know, or what do I do? And it's normal, right? But two things I like to tell people is you can actually ask your loan officer. They have, people that they work with, connections that way. So if you have zero idea where to begin with that, start with your loan officer. Ask them if they have anyone that they recommend or that they work with for homeowners. And the other thing I say is you currently have auto insurance or, homeowners where you're at, or renters or something, you could call them, let them know you're purchasing.
Good place to start.
And they can also help you. So I would say get at least 2 or 3 quotes so you can really see where things are at and make a, educated and comfortable decision as quick as possible for that as well.
So once Joe and I, for instance, when we send all of these documents to you, the borrower has e-signed everything, all of that kind of comes to you as a package. What happens next from there?
Yeah, great. So a processor will obviously start opening up your file and reviewing your application versus the documentation, what I call scrubbing. So they're looking for anything that doesn't match up to your application or anything that the underwriter will review and have questions about. So they will look at your pay stubs, see if your year-to-date is on track with what you're supposed to be making. So say you took off work because you were having a baby, and they didn't pay or something, and your year-to-date is lower, that could come up. So they're looking for any scenarios that don't match up the application. And then they're going to reach out to your loan officer typically first to, point out, hey, these are the things I found. And then they'll call you to introduce themselves, let you know a little bit overall about the process. They will be one of your point of contacts going forward. And they'll ask you any of these questions or discrepancies that they're seeing within the documentation, so that they're not blindsided by anything that the underwriter, might see and ask us, trying to pre-underwrite, so to speak, just kind of making sure nothing is going to delay us from your closing or pushing that out, or possibly losing your dream home. So it's important that even when you're discussing, things with your loan officer, you think of like, okay, for example, it's the end of the year. What happened this year? Did I change jobs? Did I not work for 2 weeks, pay time off because I made a really good bonus and I didn't care? Or things like that. Bring up all those scenarios to your loan officer ahead of time. But if not, the processor should catch all of that and ask you all those questions.
Yeah. I like the welcome call is what I tell my clients. You're going to get a welcome call from the processor. If you're an LO that has processors, because I know every company is a little different, but the one thing that I do love, and Crystal has done a great job over the last 2 years, learning the systems, learning how to do it, and calling clients. But when your processor calls a client, they're your team member. So clients need to know that this is going to happen, Joe, in my opinion. And LOs don't do a great job at making sure that, this is coming over. You're going to have somebody else call you.
Yeah.
And so sometimes, that first call can be, kind of a little harder for the processors if it's not set up properly.
Yeah.
But I think my clients love it because now we have 2 processors that are calling, Jody and Caleb. I know Jody's on a different team, but Caleb is on Crystal's. And they're calling the clients, and my clients are actually loving the phone calls.
Yeah.
And so great job to the processors that are doing the calls here at U Mortgage, because it has made a good impact for us. But Crystal, this is that time, this is where clients feel like there's dead space. Let's go with dead space, because they're all excited about finding a house. They signed their disclosures. They already had the house, inspected, which we didn't really get into this one, but we talked about home inspections before, the importance of them, Joe. And, but that dead time, that welcome call, my clients have said that welcome call breaks up that I don't know what's happening now. Yeah. Because loan officers were really good at going and trying to find business and get it going at the beginning. We're not the best at doing those weekly updates and, hey, your file's at this. So my clients really like that phone call. So processors, thank you. Okay, this is a shout out. Thank you to processors that make those calls. But that dead space, Crystal, what can you just real high level explain to them what you guys, I know you said scrub the file, but like timing to get it into underwriting, what is y'all's, I guess, what is your time frame? Your time frame that your processors have from time they get a file to trying to get it to underwriting. What does that time frame look like?
So once the intent to proceed essentially from that package is triggered, it starts the next turn time, so to speak, and that's 24 to 48 hours for the processor to get in there, to review everything, and to get it submitted to the lenders. Unless something big is missing on the file, or we see a potential huge flag that it's like, we get this in, now we're battling to get that clear to close, so to speak. So let's take that extra day, line this all up right, and then submit the file. It could take, 3 days, or depending how long it takes to get the documents from you. So this is actually I feel like this is a big thing, because we'll call the borrowers, the customer, and do our introduction. And I feel like some people feel like, oh, I already gave you all that, or I already did this. When a loan processor is asking you for something, chances are either something is outdated, or we saw a document that could cause issues, so we're needing, updated documentation so that we don't deal, with the back and forth, because if you feel like you've given us a lot now, you have no idea how much more you will have to give if we
Right.
do submit certain scenarios to underwriting, and it just creates, a ripple effect of like, now we need almost your blood sample sometimes. So
Yeah.
So I've said this before, Joe. Underwriting is, you got to think of a file like Swiss cheese when it's first put into, and that's what processors look at it as, is where are all the holes?
Mm-hmm.
Where do I have to make this a block of cheddar? So that way, when the underwriter looks at it, it's just straight down and we're good and we're gone.
Mm-hmm.
But if you leave those holes, they start going in and start weaving through. And that's what Crystal is talking about there. I know that part for sure. So I think that piece of it is getting it ready. So that's where clients think there's dead space. There's not.
Yeah.
You think of a duck in water, and I got all these analogies. I'm turning into Josh Reed over here. I swear, I'm coming up with other things to say. But a duck in water, right above the surface, it's calm and cool, but underneath, those wheels are turning, those feet are kicking to make it move, and that's what processors are. They're the ones that are kicking, they're moving. You don't see it. So, that's where that dead space is.
Yeah.
But 72 hours to get it into underwriting and things like that is a great speed, in my opinion.
Yeah. Yeah. I think another thing to remember with this is quality over speed. Sometimes, depending on your scenario, is definitely what you want. If I'm calling you every day, but I'm telling you, hey, now we have 30 conditions, tomorrow 60 conditions, are you really happy to hear from me? Like, but if you hear from me in 2 days and it's like, hey, I just need these 3 items, even if your timeline is December 31st, like, we're sitting pretty. Whereas if I'm calling you every day and I'm having to take and ask so many questions, so that's the one thing. And the processors will set up, hey, I'm calling you every other day. Are you okay with text updates for quick updates, things like that too. So, well, if they have good processing, they should. Definitely.
So once everything has been submitted to the underwriters at whatever lender the loan is going to be at, right? Then there's a couple of items that actually need to be ordered up. Can you explain what those are?
Yeah. So obviously with this, aside of getting all your documentation, now we have to order kind of like our third-party items. So like the appraisal report, the title report from the title company. Depending on the situation or the type of home, there might be additional things we need to order, but I would say the homeowner's insurance, the title work, and your appraisal are the 3 big ones that could take up some time. So, and they also affect sometimes like your debt to income, or depending on things that are found on the title commitment, or we might have to get additional information from title or the sellers or things like that. So it's important to sign your intent to proceed, get your items in so that the next step is started as soon as possible, so that if there is anything that's going to come up, we have enough time to resolve that. I think one of the big ones too with that is obviously the appraisal. You don't want to order your appraisal until your inspection obviously is done.
That's a good point.
But I think what happens is people think, like, for example, we have a January 2nd closing. You think you have time because it feels so far away. But I mean, as we all know, the year's almost over. Where did it go, right? So
Yep.
I think making sure those inspections are scheduled as soon as possible and that you review all of that right away so you can make that decision is also something that could be done in that, wasted or quiet or whatever we just called it space.
Dead space.
Yeah.
Dead space. So I think making sure like things like that are actually happening there is a great thing. Like even like I like to throw this one out because I think it doesn't really come up, but like for the veterans of VA loans, like your termite situation, know already ahead of time. Are there termites? Are there problems? You want to get that done ahead because it's always that last item that's getting ordered because everyone thinks it's going to be fine, but lo and behold, there's some termite and I got to get treatment and then we got to get that report. So I think making sure all your inspections basically are done in that dead space is a great way to think of it, or to use that dead space, so to speak, so that when we get started, the inspection's in, you're like, yes, order that appraisal, because those could take, 2 weeks, or even a week. But if things are needed and revisions, things like that, like you want to get those things in from the third parties as soon
as possible.
Yeah, and I know we're almost out of time, but the one thing that I want to make sure is when we're ordering appraisals, everybody needs to understand appraisers are independent contractors mainly. They are hired by these companies to go do it. So if they're on vacations or if they're out, you said January 2nd is a closing date. Well, you have Christmas in there, you have New Year's in there, you have holidays, you have ski travels, you have all these other things. Yes, there's multiple appraisers, but there might not be, if you're in a rural area, there might not be multiple appraisers that want to take that. So getting that stuff ordered and paid for so that way they can find an appraiser is smart to do right up front, because as a good company and a good LO, we can stop an appraiser from going out and doing an inspection where then you're not charged a trip fee or anything like that if something is wrong. But getting that ordered up front and getting it paid for is a smart thing right away.
So that's actually another one, because people think when we say, you got a link to pay the appraisal, oh, okay, I'll do it this weekend. If you don't pay that, an appraiser is not getting assigned. They are not on the schedule.
That can delay it.
You're losing, the longer you take to pay that link, you're delayed. You're add those days to your timeline for sure.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah. And look, we got. I know we got a couple more minutes. We have to steal from people today, Joe. I'm sorry. I know we're over the time, but Crystal, the important part is, let's say that file comes out of underwriting, and let's do with what we're at, a typical average file when it comes to conditions, not those really bad ones where, we didn't put them in the right way from an LO's perspective. And we just threw something up against the wall to see if it'd stick. But an average file that, we get how many conditions do we get that are client related?
I would say up to 5, kind of thing. Otherwise the rest are like, that title or things like that. Right.
It's those third party things. So kind of tell borrowers, once it comes out of underwriting, what's like the next thing that should happen, or does happen with our company. So that way they just know this is
what to expect.
Yeah. So obviously it comes out of underwriting, the processor picks up that approval, reviews it, and then starts calling you to explain what else is needed. So they might ask you weird questions like, hey, did you own this property? Or did you have this other last name, or things like that, because these things are being triggered by like fraud or third party, databases that underwriting uses. And we have to obviously fill in the holes in the Swiss cheese, like Joe said, right? So that's when they'll call you, they'll ask you and go over all of the items that the underwriter is requesting or needing, asking questions about. And I feel like ours is great, because we actually ask you the questions and type up all these explanations or whatever it is, and send you just the links to either sign or a link to upload the document to try to make it as easy as convenient as possible.
Gotcha.
Gotcha.
Yeah, I think today's show, we could talk about a lot of the processing piece and things like that. The importance is, if you're buying a house, and Crystal, you can correct me if I'm wrong. You're one of the only that can do that. But proper file setup at the beginning by an LO makes these files go so much smoother through. It gives, and then putting a story together for the processor. How did you do your income? How did you do your assets? Where are the assets coming from? Is it a gift? Who's the gifter? All these things being taken care of and mindset up front. When you're buying a house, you're not worried about when it comes out of underwriting, in my opinion. There are things that come up that, a fraud report has a judgment from something in 14 that was included in a bankruptcy, but the judgment wasn't released. That's a specific joke, because I'm dealing with that right now on a file. But those things happen, but they're very one-offs. So when you're buying a house for the first time, working with a professional like Joe, myself, we're going to make sure we take that time, put it together, and the process will flow a lot smoother. That is the importance. So when your LO asks, get it to them, especially when a processor asks you for something. You can question, you can ask them, why is this? Isn't this something? You can ask those questions, get your answers so you're comfortable with it, but get it to them as soon as possible.
Yeah,
that is the importance of it.
Yeah, the biggest thing I would say is, remember, we are on your side. We are your team. So anything that you feel like could come up or be a thing, or my mom might have put me on this property, things like that, like, tell us. We are not going to be like, oh no, we're not doing this, we can't. No, we need this information though to make sure that nothing is going to come up at the 11th hour or could, be detrimental to the process and cause that issue to not book the house or dream home or whatever. Okay, so anything, we are your team. Tell us everything. We're asking because we're trying to help get you to, the finish line.
Get to that clear to close. Absolutely. Yep. So, well, listen, I know we've gone well over. Again, we could talk about some of these items in great length and more detail, but I do want to thank you so much for coming on our show today, Crystal, and helping to educate our listeners on these very important but often overlooked, behind the scenes paperwork and that needs to be done to move everything forward. So if any of you have any questions, additional, comments or questions, and I apologize, we should have, Joe, we didn't even tell people at the beginning to drop comments and everything.
We messed up because we switched it up to where I did the intro, and usually I'm the one that says, hey, drop comments after you do the intro. So that's on me. I should have done that.
You definitely did it.
If any of you do have any comments, questions, or anything, feel free to reach out to Joe and I. As you can see, the email address below, the Mojo Show podcast @gmail.com. Definitely reach out to us. Next week, be sure to tune in next week as we continue our series on your home buying roadmap as we dive into the next steps, which is we're going to dive further into underwriting, right? And unveil the underwriting, the mysteries, that black hole that nobody seems to know about of underwriting. So be sure to tune in next week at our usual time, Wednesday mornings, 9 a.m. Central. I do thank everyone for viewing, listening in. Really appreciate. If you caught only part of the show, you want to see the rest of it, or one of the previous episodes leading up to this in your roadmap to home buying, go to our YouTube channel at The Mojo Show Real Estate Podcast. And while you're there, be sure and hit the subscribe button because we are on a mission to get to 1,000 subscribers. Before we close things out, any last words or nuggets of advice for our listeners, Joe?
So I have a shout out to UVA, Pat, especially Sherry. Thank you for the swag. And yes, I am December cross branding, Cup of Joe, UVA. So thank you guys for your support. We love you guys.
Well, I'm Joe Mortgage, and that handsome guy with the beard is Cup of Joe Mortgage, and we'll see you next week.